Good afternoon, everyone, and very welcome to our webinar. Thank you so much for joining us for what promises to be a very thought-provoking and insightful discussion, as we will be diving into one of the most pressing issues of our time, is decarbonizing for sustainable development with energy insights and innovations. And before we begin, I would really like to introduce myself. I'm Krista Tsuraki. I'm a CEO and co-founder at INVR. Together with me is our moderator for the day, Stelios Papagoriou, my co-founder and now executive chairman. So basically, today's discussion is particularly important because we are at a very, very critical juncture in the global energy landscape. There are two critical factors that we have seen, we have also experienced through working in different markets with dozens of governments that are currently catalyzing not just how fast, but also how safely we move forward. So we move towards a very sustainable energy future. The first one would be the collaboration among nations, and on the other hand, creating the right and suitable funding structures that will support this shift. So I'm really, really happy that today, besides our executive chairman, we have two incredible leaders in each of these topics. And I'm very much looking forward to this discussion. So His Excellency Lord Evans of Watford and Susie Scanelli-Cook, who is Chief Investment Officer at Empower New Energy. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to give the microphone to Stelios to kickstart with with the questions and the chat. I know we have a lot to talk about. We have been chatting in the background about this and that, and we have been comparing all the markets to one another and how pressing the issue is today. So Stelios, the floor is yours, and I do invite everyone to contribute questions. Or any sort of like in our chat, or any sort of topics that you'd like us to cover today. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Krista. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Indeed, we had a very exciting conversation. From my experience as well, I think that the two key points that everyone is really discussing is how we can all collaborate for this in a sustainable future that we are looking forward to arrive. And how can we fund all of this, right? It's obviously a massive endeavor. So let me start by introducing our two panelists. Let me start with Lord David Evans, who with his extensive experience in business and also governance, I think he brings a unique perspective on bilateral collaboration and also market dynamics. And his commitment to fostering international collaboration makes him an invaluable voice in today's conversation about how global partnerships can really accelerate the decarbonization process. Lord Evans, welcome. It'd be great if you can share a few thoughts about your career so far and give us some visibility on your great achievements.
Thank you very much, Stelios. And good day, everyone, and welcome to this webinar. I'll be pleased to give you a brief overview of my career. I served an apprenticeship as a printer and then attended an absolutely brilliant college, technical college in Watford. I was a part-time teacher there, and then I moved into sales and marketing, which I very much enjoyed. So much at the ripe old age of 29, I started my own business, which was called Centurion Press Group. And we grew to be one of the largest print management and creative design companies in Europe. We had offices in London, of course, Birmingham, Amsterdam, Hasselt in Belgium, Düsseldorf, Copenhagen, and we did a lot of work with in Athens with the Greek, or Piraeus, I should say, with the Greek shipping lines. I also owned a publishing company which published magazines and publications for associations, the institutes, and of course, business magazines. We sold Centurion in 2002 for £42 million. And after a spell on the beach, I started another publishing house and an international business consultancy. We'd worked for and with Azerbaijan and the state oil company SOCAR, and also for organizations in Europe and America for many years. And I've been chairman of the Institute for Collaborative Working and Collaboration, I'm sure will come up in our webinar today, for 24 years. And I'm sure you all know what collaboration means, and you'll forgive me by giving you an official explanation. And it goes like this, and forgive me for reading. Business relationships formed by committed organizations to maximize joint performance for achievement of mutual objectives and creation of additional value. I joined the House of Lords in 1998, 26 years ago. And ladies and gentlemen, it's been great fun. Thank you.
Thank you, Lord Evans, and I'm sure you can bring an excellent perspective on exactly how collaboration between nations, as far as Azerbaijan, but even closer, can essentially help us navigate this energy trilemma. And I would like to also introduce our second panelist, Susie Scanley-Cook. Susie has deep expertise in investment and development finance, particularly in the energy sector. Susie has worked extensively on numerous complex projects in emerging markets, in Europe, in Turkey, in Africa, and Asia, focusing on power and energy. And I'm very keen to hear her thoughts about, how can we create a financial structure that can essentially help us navigate all of this, right? Susie, it'd be great if you can also give us an overview of your career. Thank you.
Well, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to join the panel. It's a real pleasure to be here, and also to Balmoral Capital. So my interest lies in development finance. That's at the heart of everything that I do today. My career started in banking finance, and from that I transitioned into a stint in Vietnam, where I saw firsthand, as I was a junior lawyer working for Freshfields, I saw firsthand in Vietnam how impactful foreign direct investment can be. And it doesn't have to be at the NGO level. It doesn't have to be at the charitable level. You could actually make real impact by having investments that turn a return for investors, but also then pack a punch within the country and the economies that it's trying to build. So 20 years ago, seeing how Vietnam was a fledgling, it was trying to compete with China. 20 years later, it's got a strong economy. There's thousands of entrepreneurs, millions of entrepreneurs living there, really making a difference. So today, my career sort of transitioned from working more in development finance. I spent 8 years working at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, seeing how governments can have policies that they want to then input into countries where EBRD were and are investing. And from there, I started a venture with my co-founders, Talia Osmundson and Alexander Pedersen, where we realized that there is a real need for an energy transition to take place back in 2016, 2017, when these discussions were being had. And we realized that you had to change the business model, because the business model wasn't quite working to have smaller ticket sizes in countries in need for emerging markets to actually transcend the gap. So what we decided to do as an organization was to sort of unpackage and repackage an investment structure that could work. And we'll talk a bit about that during this webinar. But that's springboarded me, my career, but also all the people I work with in Empower and all our partners who we partner with in Africa, where we put together financing packages that work to solarize as much as we can of the countries in which we work.
Fantastic. That sounds very exciting. And I'm looking forward actually to discussing a bit further, because we are also talking with we also work a lot in FDI, and we are constantly looking for different ways and models that they can overcome the challenges that we have right now. However, I think that it has merit if we potentially start with discussing about how governments and policies, because I think this is what initiates everything, right? And potentially how collaboration between nations exists right now to kickstart everything that we are discussing today. So I would like to start with Lord Evans, with the first question. And let's start with the UK actually, which is obviously we know that government change. We have quite a lot of aggressive targets to decarbonize and reach a sustainable future. And obviously having bilateral relations and discussion with different nations probably had played its role. So I would like to ask you, generally from your point of view, how have the UK bilateral relations with other countries, do you think, influenced and also might support initiatives and investments in decarbonization and sustainable energy projects?
Oh, thank you. Well, UK relations have been absolutely crucial in advancing decarbonisation and sustainable energy projects. By combining resources, sharing research, and co-developing technologies, basically, partnerships, especially with leaders in renewable energy, have accelerated the UK's decarbonisation efforts and attracted significant investments. I read in the recent Harrington report on FDI that it's one of the reasons the UK has been high on the list for inward investment, particularly in this sector. So these collaborations have positioned the UK as a proactive leader in the global transition to a low carbon economy. And I'm very excited about that, of course.
Fantastic. And to the actually government officials that we might have in the audience right now, what would you think would be some key factors that governments, based on your experience and potentially even taking UK's example as an example, what key factors should governments and businesses as well prioritize to boost bilateral collaboration in the context of sustainable development, especially in clean energy, green technologies, and generally environmental innovation?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. Really, to boost bilateral cooperation in sustainable development, foster innovation, and businesses should harmonize regulations, foster innovation through research and development and technology transfer, and create public-private partnerships. I think these steps will create a stable environment and especially a stable investment environment, and drive large-scale clean energy projects, unlocking the full potential of collaboration. It's that word again, for a sustainable future.
Fantastic. And would you say potentially there are other strategies that maybe they are missing right now, and should the UK potentially adopt to strengthen bilateral ties with emerging markets in the context again of global energy transition and sustainable development?
Well, obviously to strengthen ties with emerging markets in the global energy transition, the UK should develop and deepen diplomatic engagement, create tailored strategies, and offer technical assistance. I think that's vital. By focusing on capacity building and sharing expertise, the United Kingdom can establish long-term, mutually beneficial partnerships that support sustainable development goals.
Fantastic. And I think that this is something that a lot of governments and institutions around the world could potentially adopt, right? Obviously, This is something that we are navigating for the first time in the human history. And I'm guessing there is a lot of things to be learned, a lot of lessons to be learned, and a lot of experiences to be shared. So I think this is extremely critical, sharing knowledge and sharing experiences and creating this kind of collaboration that it's not only about trade, but also helping each other to navigate this, right? So I think this is extremely spot on. And then one last question before we switch to the financial side of things. Lord Evans, do you foresee potentially any challenges which will also obviously have opportunities in fostering collaborative efforts between the UK and emerging markets, again in the context of advancing decarbonization and energy transition?
Well, the main challenge in UK emerging market collaboration is navigating diverse regulations which complicate aligning initiatives and joint projects. Financing constraints and technological gaps in these markets further hinder progress in sustainable energy. However, the UK can leverage its expertise in green finance, renewable energy, and policy development to help overcome these obstacles and drive global sustainability goals.
Fantastic.
I want to add to what Lord, sorry, just one second. I wanted to add on what Lord David just mentioned. It's something that we always use whenever we open a speech in a new market for the circles. We highlight a lot. Besides the Canadians that are like explorers, and they do love going to not riskier, but different markets, I would say. The UK has shown like very a huge interest and very intense commitment to opening new markets and assisting them in a way that other nations don't. As you mentioned, I guess green financing technology, but at the same time, I feel like the UK has the understanding and the capacity to go in with a whole structure of consultancies. They go into great depths of understanding and decoding the market. And I think this is the base of why we always say with Stelios that not just because, we're also British, the companies as well, but the thing is that Canadians too, right? I just said it from the beginning. The companies they take an interest in new markets and in new ideas, and they love to sit down and brainstorm with governments and say, okay, how can we help? But really, how can we help? And they have seen systems that have failed, tragically failed, and they have seen systems that enable the countries to reach the full potential. So they go in with a very tailored strategy and assistance to collaborate. I think this is the most beautiful basis for assisting them and bringing them in like new finance structures and technology too. Sorry for the intervention, Stelios.
No, I think that this is spot on, and that's actually what I wanted to mention as well. That this kind of mindsets and posture, it's obviously obvious from the policy side, but also we see it a lot from the private side. We see a lot of companies that are not afraid to enter new markets, explore new countries, and deep dive into understanding what are the problems and using their expertise and financing to solve it, right? And it's true, actually, most of the explorers we see are out there. The Canadians are there too, I want to mention, but most of them are British. So that's a very good observation. And this is a good segue, actually, because, again, policy-wise, it makes sense. Bilateral relations are very important, but a lot of this change will actually come from entrepreneurs and individuals that they want to, go out there and make a difference and explore new markets and new countries. And they will need the right leverage and infrastructure, especially financial infrastructure, right? And vehicles. So I would like to pass over to our second panelist, Susie, And it'd be great if Susie, if you could give us some your opinion and overview on, and based on your experience, on some of the most effective investment structures that you've seen so far working, or even if you want to use some examples of things that you tried and didn't work. I'm not sure, it's up to you, for advancing essentially this energy transition, decarbonization, and especially in the emerging markets of Africa and Asia.
Thank you very much. I think I'd like to speak to the market itself and trying to find decarbonisation systems and projects that work in economies in Africa, I think is very challenging. And what we have seen within Empower is the ability to do small scale at a profit. And I think that's important because ultimately we have to always look at the investor base, where we're getting our money from. And we're getting our money from investors who, as I said, want to see an impactful investment, triple bottom line concept being very valid. But what you need to do is to have a look at the market that you're trying to achieve decarbonisation in. And I think it's from Africa, in our markets in Africa, it's very much looking more at the small scale. So what we try to do is to find decentralized ways to make investments. And that means we pre-finance solar with battery, without battery, for commercial industrial players. So those people operating factories, plants, premises, schools, whatever, but to take them off the grid to a certain extent and to make them independently capable of getting their own energy. And we found that that does work, but that's not to detract from everything else that needs to happen in a country. It's not an island economy. You still need to have the grid. You still need investment into the grid, and to find other ways to be able to provide power to the users. And it's not just solar. There's other means as well. But what I think is very keenly important is to do things more at a smaller scale, to be able to package products that work for our customers. And I just wanted to turn a little bit to sort of things that does work and things that don't work. So Empower is just a financing house. We don't have in-house capabilities in EPC and construction, and we don't find our own projects. We partner with developers. And that is a model that does work. It means that we can be very agnostic. We can work with whomever provides a good project, and we can finance that project. And we can work with thousands of EPC contractors and project developers in all of our countries. But it also means, to a certain extent, that we are relying on third parties all of the time. So whilst this partnership model that is successful, it does have its challenges when you want to step in and change the way in which a construction is taking place. You just have to get another constructor to come and do that. We don't have in-house capabilities. But I would say that on the whole, it's the biggest challenge is being able to be flexible in financing, finding the right financing structures.
Yes, and obviously it's a massive endeavor trying to have everything in-house, especially if you're trying to do potentially smaller scale operations, right? So I think I'm guessing that's to be expected. And by the way, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to create the Net Zero Circle, because we realized that in order to create change, we need to be able to enable different backgrounds and all of the different components that you need to actually make a project work, to bring them together, to collaborate. So I think what you just said speaks very close to my heart, Susie. And I'm guessing the summary would be that the most efficient way then to potentially that you've seen to work in emerging markets is to start primarily with industrial use cases, where I'm guessing you have less dependencies on the grid and everything, but then eventually also cater for the future, right? Which I think is very true. And are there any criteria when you're looking at those projects, either industrial or maybe others? Are there any particular criteria that you prioritize when you are doing your evaluations?
Yeah, so I mean that's the big question always. It's the risk analysis, and within Empower we stringently look at the risks of every project, and the risks will stem from the risk of the off-taker, so the person, the commercial industrial player with whom we're going to finance the solar and the clean energy product. Can they pay their bills? Will they be able to pay their bills on time? We do a really, there's some smiles there. You have to do that deep audit with your financial counterparty just to make sure that they're going to be sound. And also then you look at the partners we work with. So as I said, we finance, we don't have the in-house capabilities. So we need to partner with good partners. But we also appreciate there's some small economies, so we need to work together with partners to help develop them to become even better, to do better construction next time. So, but it is assessing the risk of construction happening on time, on budget, and having the capabilities to construct according to our very stringent HSE requirements as well that our investors will look at. But I suppose the overarching risk that we always look at is the country risk. We work across the North African region, Morocco, Tunisia, Morocco, Nigeria, Cameroon, Kenya, moving into Zambia. All of these countries have such differences in country risk, and it's looking at a country risk of today, but there's no crystal ball to see how your project, which is relatively long term, 15, 20 years, how the country risk is going to evolve over that period of time, and what you can possibly mitigate and plug any potential holes or difficulties. I mean, take the example of Nigeria. You've got sort of currency crises, you've got increase of diesel fuel, which puts pressures on our off-takers because they're trying to balance their books and they're struggling because of the economic difficulties in country. But then you've got the positive stories. You look at Tunisia just recently, at the end of last year, it implemented in law new regulations to allow us to do this distributed model of self-consumption, auto-consumption, to allow companies to put solar on their roofs and to be self-sufficient and more off-grid. So it swings and balances, but it's also being very aware and acutely on the ball of what risks there will be for all of the projects that you go into, which will always evolve.
Of course. So then I'm guessing we could summarize it. The first risk would be the off-taker. I'm guessing this would be the biggest risk, right? And then generally the trajectory of the country and in terms of going green or not, I'm guessing.
Definitely.
Amazing. And I think over the last 2-3 years, obviously we've seen a lot of popularity, a lot of funds and investments and policies have been switched and started shifting towards enabling energy transition and electrification and all of that. And we see a lot of innovative financing mechanisms that place. For example, we know green bonds from the EU, they've been around for a while. We have impact funds and all of these new financing mechanisms. Have you seen, based on your experience, that they have accelerated the energy transition? Are there something that you use to potentially alleviate some of the risk and make you feel more at ease when you are investing? Can you share some of your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I think that's like 100%. I don't think I would be here having the pleasure to be at this webinar if it wasn't for all of these innovative impact financial tools and funds. They've been around for a while. I think, in the media, you might sort of hear too much of greenwashing. But that aside, there are investors out there who want to have impactful investments. Obviously, everything has to be looked at from the risk angle. We've explored that a little bit already. But our investor base is predominantly impact investment at its core. So that's us, sort of the pot of money that we have to put into our projects. But it doesn't mean that the projects can be plain sailing based on just putting our investor money into the projects. We have to look at that money and make it work better. As I said, we need to make the financial return work. And we can't do it alone. So we are always looking at other financial methods to do that. So blended finance triggers grant funding whenever it's available, credit lines to maximise the debt and the credit line on our products. We work alongside NORAD, the Norwegian government arm, offering grant funding. We've benefited from government grants in Luxembourg, and so newly we're looking at working on credit lines with Odyssey Financing. There's so much out there, and it's all very available. The only problem is it's so scattered around. There isn't really one body that you can sort of tap into, and it can give you the answer to all of these blended finance products that can be used. So I think that's probably work in progress in the future, because as I said, you can't just exist with the money that you want to invest. It has to work harder, because the returns can't be made otherwise. So I think also looking at it from a local bank level as well, not to forget that it's not just outsiders coming in to invest, but also local banks are always looking at ways to bring more investment into their country. And commercial banks do offer interesting credit lines, often with an overlay, if you look at where the money comes from IFI, DFI, or whatever World Bank structures there might be. But they are looking to offer local currency financing, which again helps to alleviate that sort of financial burden on potential investors wanting to come in and do business in country.
And I think that's a very, over neglected challenge. That yes, especially if you operate in so many different emerging markets, having to deal with local financing and local currency and all that stuff is extremely important. I think this is very, very spot on. And one last question for Susie before I would like to go back to both of you actually with a final question. But to Susie, before we go there, you've worked with a lot of different regions, a lot of different countries, from Europe to Asia to Africa. Right now, you mentioned so many countries. Are there any particular challenges that you have encountered in financing projects there, and that maybe you would like to share? I'm sure we'll have people in the audience that maybe they struggle with the same challenges, or they are very passionate about doing things that they don't even know what is awaiting them, So if you can share some thoughts, it would be great.
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to repeat what Lord David said earlier. That regulatory framework and that sense of collaboration is really key. That is the key that unlocks everything. So, and without that, it wouldn't happen. So you do need those bilateral negotiations happening at government levels to start to unlock it, to have the policies driving forward the investment. That then, in a very rudimentary way, paves the path for a risk appetite to be acceptable for investors to then come in, and then people like us to find innovative structures to make this money work in country, and then to solve, in part, very small part, the energy access issue that there is across the continent of Africa, and not just Africa, in many places around the world. And so that's probably the main challenge. But it's also, from my perspective, you've got net metering announcements, which bring volatility to the market. Then you've also got subsidies being added to grid price, which could then jeopardize the offering that we're making to the clients, because obviously the policy level is happening at a different level from our projects. But provided the regulatory regulations are there strong enough to allow businesses like Empower to do a distributed energy model, then I think we should always be able to operate. But then you also have to look, and it's such a long value chain here, at the end user, the off-taker. Whilst we talked about the financial risk on the off-taker that we have to analyze, you also have to look at that company. Does the company actually want to be that pioneer, the only people in town with solar on their roof? Because it's not distributed widely in our operations, in our countries of operation at all. You won't see solar everywhere as you might in a European context. So does that aluminium processor, or does that sort of factory owner want to take that risk, take a long-term contract, 15, 20 years, which is very not part of the culture of business in our countries, and to basically sign up for a long time to have the solar and be that pioneer? And that's not always the case. So that is that's actually quite a big challenge we find in our market. We're all pioneers, we're all starting this journey, and it's not straightforward at all.
Yeah, this is 100% true. I think that's the biggest challenge in every market, actually, trying to find those people that will carry the flag and start it first, right? And try this new way of powering the plant, or putting solar panels on the roof. But I think that this is changing a lot, especially the last 2-3 years. I think there is, and this is where actually promotion makes a massive role. I think changing the mindset of people is what it is and will be one of the biggest drivers. So before we close the webinar, I would like to ask each of you actually about some emerging trends that you see that will eventually carry on or accelerate this energy transition that we are going forward. And I would like to start first with Lord David Evans. What emerging trends would you see in the sustainable trade and green investment that will shape the future of the bilateral relations as we have them right now? And looking at the UK specifically, how would you see, or how should the UK position itself to leverage this for a successful energy transition?
Well, thank you very much. I see this as a huge opportunity for the United Kingdom. Emerging trends like circular economies, ESG criteria, and sustainable supply chains will shape future UK bilateral relations. And to lead the global energy transition, the UK must align its trade policies with these trends, attracting green investments and driving sustainable growth. So by influencing international agreements and promoting the inclusion of emerging markets, the UK can strengthen its economic interests and foster more equitable global relations. And that's a summary of a much larger subject, obviously, but that's the way I feel.
Yeah, I think that we can even have a webinar only on that topic, right? But thank you for summarizing this. And as we said earlier, I think the UK has actually great relations globally and quite a global overview of what's happening to, I think, leverage these trends. And Susie, from your point of view, apart from policy and potentially financing, what kind of trends or maybe technologies do you see emerging as game changers in achieving sustainable development goals? And do you think that you are positioned rightly to capitalize on this development?
Yeah, there's so many trends and technologies, so it's very difficult to know what to pick. But I think from a solar perspective, the biggest trend has been the downward cost of solar. Year on year, it's going down. China's producing it more cheaply. Also, what's very interesting is other countries, other economies want to be in the market to produce solar. I was talking to the Egyptian government, and they were saying actually they would like to. Why shouldn't they be in the forefront of creating solar in the continent? You don't have to have all the shipping costs and the effort to bring it, and you're also creating economy there. And yes, goodness me, the sun is shining in Egypt. It's the power. It's powered by sunshine. So I think that is a potential trend/stroke technology change. But again, from our business model, what we see doesn't keep up with where we are is the storage. Storage is we haven't quite cracked that nut. We are always looking at battery storage. The price is still quite high. But I think there are other options. There has to be other possibilities to store energy. A lot is talked about, but I think R&D in some ways needs to step up and actually find a few more solutions to a cheaper way to store energy when it's not being used. One final thought, I think, from a solar perspective is floating solar. I saw just yesterday a beautiful graphic of a floating solar plant in Africa, and I kind of think, you can use whatever land or water space you might have, and it's kind of a bit of a no-brainer. So if we can make that technology work at a better, more competitive price, I think that can also be quite transformatory in the context of access to energy on the continent of Africa.
Completely. And I think that this is changing very fast, actually, right? I think the technology in terms of efficiency is growing so rapidly, and we now have a lot of people looking into storage. So I'm hoping that this will change as well very soon. We've also seen the lithium prices dropping spectacularly. So I'm guessing this will affect the price there as well. But yeah, as actually we're talking with a lot of governments and institutions, one of the big blockers is how do we store the energy that we produce during the day, right? So I think this is spot on. I would like to thank both of you for giving such unique points of view on those two very important topics that we need to, address to keep on accelerating towards our a sustainable and abundant energy future. Lord David Evans, thank you so much also for giving us a great perspective from the UK side, and Susie, your insights specifically on Africa, but generally on emerging markets was invaluable. Should anyone wants to talk directly to either Susie or Lord David Evans, feel free to reach them out on LinkedIn and or leave us a comment below. Before we close, actually, I'm not sure if you have any comments from the audience. I'm not on LinkedIn right now, so if you have any comments or any questions, okay, there are no questions. Great. Any maybe final remarks for either one before we close? Maybe Lord Evans.
Well, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to discuss this very important subject. We have a new government in the United Kingdom, of course, and
yes.
it's part of the Labour government's policies to expand in this area, which I think, as I said earlier, which is a great opportunity for the UK and indeed for emerging markets. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for being here. And Susie?
Really, just to echo my thanks for inviting me to join the panel, and also to echo the words of it's very important that we all work collaboratively. The bilateral agreements at the government level will feed into what's being done on the ground, and it's not just an emerging markets question. It's obviously for the planet, it's a global question. And I think I welcome all of the great ideas of everybody, not necessarily just participating, also listening to this webinar to go ahead and make these differences that need to be made.
Thank you, Susie, and thank you both for being here. Chrisa, the floor is yours.
I just wanted to I've been taking loads of notes. As I mentioned when we were in the background, I literally just came back from a 35-hour trip to East Timor, Timor-Leste, and going back into like these decarbonization. I was really thinking how, because we do as you know, there is a lack of interest from the British companies right now, and I was thinking, how could we empower even small businesses? Because I want to just let everyone know that there are the traditional markets where we see, and then where we see the British companies, smaller companies, but all the way to the bigger companies. They could, and organizations, that they could look into different markets that have all the characteristics that could entice them, that could interest them, and they could make a very good investment that will change lives. Because yes, there is a need for like smaller scale, but also big scale projects all around the world. I would say look into, as we said, Brits are explorers, so look into different very different potentials of markets, and don't be closed-minded in whatever you understand best, because your technology, and you mentioned R&D, that's so important. Renan, there's so many initiatives in the UK that empower and enable even smaller technology providers to tap into investment, tap into funding, and go into to different markets. I would say that this is what we should kind of like empower through the Net Zero Circle and through our services. And I think that the most beautiful collaborations that we have seen are between international governments and British companies. Besides the government, obviously, that has had this in the heart of their policies, and we're all looking forward to see what the new government will put on the the microscope. What we're going to be looking into. So, just without any further blubbering, I'd say that it has been a very insightful conversation. This is exactly the type of discussions we should be having right now before COP as well. So I'd like to again thank Stelios as well for your moderation. I know this is a topic you hold in heart, and you're exceptional moderator, I must say. And I'd like to invite everyone to join us for the 4th Global Energy Week in London. And we will be touching upon energy transition, decarbonisation dynamics, hydrogen roadmaps, global market growth, investment opportunities all around the world. We have a few surprises coming up for the next weeks leading up to the event. We will be looking into technologies and how we can implement them, how all these technologies are funded, and how to optimize the value chain. Also, October 14th, if I'm not mistaken, we have the Chilean ambassador's residence reception leading to our event at the House of Lords. And we are co-organizing this with our friends at the Balmoral Global Capital Group. And we look forward to seeing you there. Don't forget to send your questions, your ideas, and let's have this conversation way more often than we do right now. Thank you both so much for your invaluable contribution to this webinar. I know we have a very, very good month ahead of hard work. September means work.